Pro Cannabis Media Programming and PCM TV is supported by Revolutionary Clinics, Massachusetts' #1 medical dispensary where the patient comes first, and by Salient Systems for Video Surveillance. You've got regulations, Salient has solutions for your security needs. And by Accounting Buds, your #1 CPA specialist for the cannabis industry. And by Artery Pay, easy, cheap, fun, and legal, just like cannabis should be. Well, thank goodness it's Friday afternoon and another edition of Green Rush Live. Hi, everybody. I'm Jimmy Young from Pro Cannabis Media.
And I'm David Rabinovitz, trusty sidekick. We got a great show for you today.
There you go. Jimmy. Thank you so much, David, for joining us as always on Friday. And we're so excited. We're going to jump right into our two very special guests. We have very exciting guests for you on this particular Friday afternoon. One is an older friend from the Boston, Massachusetts area, Marlboro, Massachusetts, if you will. His name is Jaret Christopher. He's the former CEO of Sprout Online. Jaret, great to see you.
Great to see you again, Jimmy. Thanks for having us.
Appreciate it. And I appreciate you tapping me on the shoulder and tipping me off a week ago at NECAN that you had been acquired by a company that most people in the cannabis industry are familiar with. It's the company called Weedmaps. And we're so proud to happen to have their CEO, Chris Beals, joins us as well on the Green Rush Live show today. Chris, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me on. This is great. Exciting time to be on with Jaret.
I was going to say, and thank you so much for acquiring his company. I really appreciate that. I know I had absolutely nothing to do with that transaction, but I will certainly say thank you for that. I do want to start with Chris, if you don't mind, Jaret, but we're going to come right back to you. Why was the timing right to acquire a CRM for Weedmaps?
Well, so Weedmaps as a company, or WM Technology as we've come to be known. So we're a 13-year-old company. We're much older than most people realize. We're on track to do $205 million in revenue this year, and so we're, I believe to be the largest and most expansive software company in the cannabis space. But notably this year we went public in June on NASDAQ, and as part of our growth, we've always been, I think, a fairly heads-up company in terms of how we can expand the portfolio, how we can better support consumer businesses, because we're not just sort of the largest marketplace for cannabis goods. We also have this suite of B2B and SaaS software. And so we've been familiar with Sprout. We're integrated with Sprout, and they've been a great partner through that integration. And as we looked across the suite of the internal software we had, there's just a need for the capability to power loyalty, to help businesses sort of reactivate and retarget consumers. I mean, heck, we have this huge marketplace. We have this software, and so it just felt like a natural synergy and sort of way to expand the portfolio. And it was great that they were already integrated with us. That doesn't mean that there's not a long and exciting roadmap of other things we can do, but I would say right time in our growth, being public, we're well capitalized. We have the ability to expand quickly. And so it just felt like a great opportunity at a great time.
And Jaret, from your perspective, you started this company a few years back. How did you position yourself for this exit? Or was that a strategy? You always had that in place that perhaps when Weedmaps or WM Technology was ready, you would be ripe, your business would be ripe to be acquired?
Jimmy, I think there's a tremendous amount of synergy between Sprout and Weedmaps on many fronts. The focus of our companies in helping drive revenue, helping drive sales into a dispensary or online through e-commerce. It's just such a natural fit in terms of the technology that Sprout has built and what Weedmaps has developed over the last 13 years.
There you go. David, I gave you a whole bunch of questions. Do you got one ready to rock?
No, I don't, Jimmy. I got the list in front of me. I'm following along.
All right. Well, I've got it. I've got a question for you. One of the things that I find intriguing about Weedmaps in particular, when people talk about getting into the cannabis industry, a lot of times they talk about the plant touching parts of the industry, whether the grow or the retail dispensary or even a medical side or even a lab side.
But in your case, this is an ancillary company that is kind of the middleman, if you will, between a transaction. Is this for someone who is also in an ancillary marijuana related business officially? I'm finding this great that you were able to go public successfully, and now you're starting to go into the M&A world. Are you targeting more businesses? Are you going after more of a business to business focus for WM Technology now that you're public?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's funny is we've always been, I think, very focused on how we can help cannabis businesses. That's retailers, brands, doctors and more medical states, how we can help them grow and be successful. And a lot of our early growth strategy was the natural offshoots around having this large cannabis marketplace, which was the most and is the most efficacious way for them to reach consumers, to advertise to consumers, to increase reach with consumers. And so a lot of it was the natural offshoots of having that marketplace. Well, probably they need help with like delivery and logistics software. They probably need help with, if we're going to do all this work cleaning up their data to make it such that a consumer can shop, browse, and decide what to purchase, let's help them power e-com on their own website. And so, I think a lot of our focus is on expanding that portfolio, but really I think it's centered on, and this is some of the, I think some of the really interesting aspects of what we can do with Sprout is, how do we help them better understand how to cost effectively deploy capital? How can we sort of take online actions and tie it out to offline actions and sort of some of the more technical things that frankly we haven't seen done outside of the cannabis space. And so I think we'll be breaking ground in the cannabis sector in ways that haven't been done with other consumer goods. So that's all really exciting. But I don't want to give short shrift to the fact that there's still a ton we can do to make that Weedmaps.com, that consumer experience, more navigable, more shoppable. And so we're investing heavily in that side as well.
There you go. Okay, David, you've had a few minutes. Have you found a question you'd like to add?
I do, Jimmy, from your list. I have some others as well. But so
Good.
Do you think Weedmaps will ever get into the plant touching side of the business?
No, never. So we are not I should emphasize, we are not a plant touching company. We provide software and services to these businesses. I think there's sort of an overarching principle, which is we're really in a relationship of trust, especially as we've leaned into this sort of how can we be a success partner for these businesses. And people don't want to see their partner in success become their competitor. And so I think, out of is a reflection of, I think, the position we've taken and the trust that these businesses have put in us to help them grow. It just is not a natural step, and frankly just doesn't fit with what we're well suited to do, which is make good software and do good data solutions to go into the touch the plant side. That being said, I think we have a very big policy team, and we're very active in a number of states so that we can take what the rules and regulations are on the ground and build it into the software to help these businesses compete in these marketplaces. So in that aspect, we really are focused on how the touch the plant aspects work, but it's so we can make better software for those businesses.
So what do you think Weedmaps will look like? Like, what's the vision in your mind? What's Weedmaps going to look like 3 to 5 years down the road?
I think it is a sort of let me think of the right way to say this. It will sort of be the go-to destination for businesses, brands, and retailers to increase their revenue, to augment their demand. So how do I get more consumers coming in? How do I get the people who shopped with me a month ago, 3 months ago, 6 months ago, to come back in, to spend more? How the go-to destination for consumers who are confused. What's Delta 8? What's Delta 10? What are all these new products? Wait, you're telling me they make a tincture for this now? The place where they're going to be able to go and not just see products to buy, but actually go through and be guided to what's going to be the right product for them, what's going to help them with their medical condition, or what's not going to make them feel paranoid as a recreational or adult use user. And then separately, increased offerings for brands. We provide a pretty substantial or probably the best way for brands to sort of build voice and affinity with consumers. So expanding that piece and data solutions. Those are really kind of the big pillars that we're built upon for the next 3 to 5 year window.
Jaret, I got to ask you the question. There's so many other CRM platforms out there in the cannabis space. What differentiates yours from others?
Sure. Thanks, Jimmy. So Sprout has always taken a holistic approach to building out our CRM solution. So we have customer relationship management, which is really the core platform. And then we've built an entire suite of marketing solutions around it, creating this all-in-one or end-to-end CRM type solution. So we're one of the very few that has not just CRM functionality, true CRM capabilities, but also omni-channel marketing such as SMS or MMS marketing, email marketing, push notification. We're soon going to be rolling out native application, loyalty, and a number of other marketing tools.
And of course, as we all know on this call, and anybody who's watching, this industry is probably the most regulated, certainly the newest regulated and most compliant industry that's out there. One of the things we talk about all the time here as a media company is teaching the industry that you can control your own message and share that with your already existing database, because that to me is the one thing that is available to the cannabis industry. I'm taking that you guys take advantage of that as well. Am I right?
Absolutely. So we've built a number of compliance modules that are inherent within our CRM application. So we make sure we help our clients make sure they're implementing compliant marketing campaigns and solutions.
With the new all sorts of new technology being introduced into the media world, one are these cute little QR codes that pop up on videos these days. Is that something that you guys have been looking at? I think they call them enhanced product listings, and you can actually pop the QR code on and it takes you right to a buying opportunity.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that, Jimmy. So QR codes are nothing new. They've been around for a very long time, but since COVID, they've really reemerged as a marketing tool and solution. So we've taken full advantage of that opportunity, and we've integrated QR codes within our application. It's both being used by our dispensary clients, and then Chris had mentioned we're also focused on brands as well. So our brand clients are incorporating QR codes within their packaging in other forms to be able to capture consumer information and engage with their customers.
Here's the $1 million question, guys, about federal reform. What's your read on it? Chris, I'm going to go with you. I mean, I keep hearing things and then nothing happens. And I'm hearing things and then nothing happens. I guess that's not that much dissimilar to everything in politics. Not that we can control what goes on in DC, but I would guess as a company the size of yours, what is your feeling about the initiatives that are going on in Washington, DC right now?
Yeah, so it's interesting. We, as I mentioned earlier, we have what I think is the largest and most efficacious policy team out there, but we primarily focus on state and local work. We do some federal work, but that balance is a reflection of where we can be most effective in helping to shape functioning legal markets. And this is something we can get into separately, but most state legalized cannabis markets still have the majority of consumer demand met on the illicit side because they don't have enough retailers. They have issues with taxation. They have issues with restricting certain category types, THC limits, not allowing edibles. We can get into all that. But as it relates to the federal side, look. Our pretty strongly held feeling is that none of the federal efforts right now will pass during the first term of the Biden administration, and I think there's a bit of a slog if in the next administration afterwards, whether that's Biden or somebody else. I think it's going to be a slog to get something passed at that juncture, and there's nuanced reasons why that is, but right now I think it's a good talking point. It's a good way for folks heading into midterm elections to maybe make themselves look a little younger, a little hipper. But at the end of the day, President Biden has not, I'm trying to think of a delicate way to put this, but during the 80s and 90s was, for all intents and purposes, the Democratic face of the war on drugs for periods of time. And I don't think that a leopard can change its spots so quickly, as they say. But there's also the fact that, look, something like safe banking, it hasn't been brought up for committee hearing. You go to committee, it passes out of committee to floor, and that's if it can't even be brought up for committee vote, why are people so bullish that it will happen? And I think there's some interesting stuff happening behind the scenes where, I think some segments of the Democratic caucus don't want to see something like safe banking pass without criminal justice reform and that sort of thing. There are other members of the Democratic caucus who, frankly, anything beyond sort of banking is too much for them to stomach. And so I think you take even like sort of the mildest end of the spectrum of the federal bills, and there's serious roadblocks to anything moving.
David, you got another one?
I do, but it's in a different topic. So I'm.
We're talking about weed business. What different talking? What topic are you at?
Here we go. So you guys went public via a SPAC, and I bought shares in that. I think it's a good investment, and I think it's going to be a great long-term investment. But SPACs have lately all of a sudden fallen out of favor. Are you happy you went the SPAC way? And what were your considerations between doing a SPAC versus a conventional IPO?
Yeah. So I should say, in a past life, I was a lawyer. In a long past life, I was a lawyer who worked on some early SPAC transactions. And the SPAC as a vehicle has gone through an interesting pathway. I think the funny thing is there's a certain, in SPAC versus IPO, I think there's some really good cases where a SPAC makes sense over an IPO. And without getting into all of those, in our case, we were going out and wanted to curate and have a investor base of investors who had strong expertise and acumen in tech, SaaS, online marketplaces. And I think the thing we found pretty quickly when we went out and sort of had initial kind of test the waters meetings was a lot of those funds, frankly, knew nothing about cannabis. And so we'd go and we'd sit through the meetings and we'd find that we get to the end of the meeting where we should have been talking about revenue growth plans, market expansion, that sort of thing. And we'd spend a lot of time explaining why Amazon or Walmart weren't going to be selling cannabis out of their dispensary section next week, or why you couldn't grow cannabis the same as you grow fields of tobacco. And that's one of the advantages of the SPAC route is you can take a longer period of time and have more in-depth conversations with these big anchor investors. And that was a big part of the reason of why we went the SPAC route versus the IPO route. I think in terms of the hiccups and the bumps, I think there's a lot of great SPAC stories out there, DraftKings, others, where good, strong companies putting together good, strong stories and sort of, I think have everything that a traditional IPO does. I think where we're seeing some of the issues are some of these newer SPAC stories and things are coming out. The SPACs have been raised and the SPAC sponsors are looking for targets, and let's just say it's not a target-rich environment. And so you have to maybe dig a little deeper in the sleeve of companies that are out there. And so I think that's where we're seeing some of the hiccups coming with some of these SPACs and sort of potentially not being as accurate as they could be with projections and things.
And Jaret, with acquisitions comes the word transition. I would think that the last few days have been kind of a whirlwind for you and your group. How has a transition going, and what has been the reaction from some of the people that have been working with you for a few years in your own home office there?
Yeah. So first off, hats off to Chris. I mean, he has just built a phenomenal business. He's brought in top talent across the entire organization. It's been a very seamless transition where we've hit the ground running. We're already, very much integrated in many facets of the business and very much rowing in the same direction. And, our team at Sprout, has felt very welcome, at WM Technology and just really, so excited to be here and be part of this journey.
Yeah. And WM Technology, it doesn't have the same ring as Weedmaps, Chris, but I get the reason why. Branding is branding. Are you going to get used to the fact that people are still going to refer to your company as Weedmaps, no matter how much you try to make it WM Technology?
Well, it's really WM Technology is actually sort of the parent. It's a reflection of the fact that there's really two apps to the business. There's Weedmaps, then there's WM Business. There's sort of the SaaS solution set that we have, and the people there are saying, well, I use WM Store, or I use WM Retail, or WM, these sort of things. And so it's just the umbrella holder for sort of the breadth of things. But half of that is Weedmaps, and yeah, that is our name, that is our origin and our history, and that is that kind of unstoppable kind of consumer marketplace side. So yeah, it's we accept all names, well, the good ones at least.
I think it's 110. And I know as much as I'd like to sit here and say, so guys, how much was the deal for? You're not releasing that just yet, right?
That's right. That's right.
I had a feeling that was going to happen. Listen, is there anything that we should look for from WM Technology or from Weedmaps that we will be seeing in the coming months as far as a business strategy go, unless you don't want to share that? But it seems like this is just the beginning of merger and acquisition time for WM Technology.
Yeah, look, I think we're we have a really strong engine for growth internally. Part of the reason that Jaret and the Sprout team made such good sense to kind of bring into the fold was it was a lean, hungry team that was kind of executing and driving forward. And I think that for us, we're as opposed to blindly kind of engaging on an M&A strategy, we're growing fast. I mean, we've added almost 200 people this year internally, and so there's a lot of strong internal growth. But yeah, we're keeping our heads up, and we're actively looking at areas where we can kind of do bolt-on acquisitions that add. But in no means is it sort of a kind of a blind let's grab anything out there. So I think we're being selective, but definitely taking advantage of the fact that we have a really big war chest. We're a highly profitable company. And we've got a good framework, and in terms of some really strong leaders and folks within the company, that's a good landing place for sort of acquired companies to come in and grow even faster.
Well, fantastic, guys. We're a little past our usual 420 break. As you know, the traditional 420 break, a lot of people don't know that started, in California and San Rafael, California, specifically, with a couple of kids, the Waldos that used to meet at the Louis Pasteur statue, all that stuff. One of them was friends with the Dead, and then the Dead grabbed onto it. Everybody knows the origin, but what you probably don't know, and I think Jaret from this area might have a better shot at remembering a certain artist out of New Hampshire called Jonathan Edwards, who had a song called Shanty. It's my version of 420 on the East Coast. So as we connect both coasts, we usually take our break at 420. We allow Jonathan Edwards to sing one of my favorite songs, Shanty. But right now, I do want to thank both of you for joining us here on a very busy week at the end of your week. Congratulations, Jaret. Congratulations, Chris, on a great acquisition. We look forward to seeing the growth of both your companies, now one company, and we look forward again to keeping in touch with you because, as I say all the time, we're all in this together, and it is a whole new world of weed. And that's what this plant was put on this earth to do, was to bring us all together. And my job, I continue to do, I think, is to connect both coasts. And thank you for allowing us to showcase an example of that on our Green Rush show.
Welcome back, everybody. Thanks for hanging in there with us. You're with us in the Green Rush. We do this every Friday from 4 to 6 Eastern time. We've got 3 more guests we brought in. And if you were watching some of the videos during the break, you've seen all 3 of them. We've got Carl nodding his head up and down. In fact, I believe the video of him just finished up. Greg is with us, and Alex of Bud's Goods, and we're gonna go. As soon as I untie my tongue, we're going to have a great discussion with these 3, but we asked Jaret and Chris to hang out for a couple more minutes. We had a few questions that came in we wanted to pose to them. So, Chris, you folks California has had a lot of challenges. They had a lot of unlicensed folks who were selling. Took them a lot of years to get their regulations in place. And then once they did, there were a lot of people who just didn't want to go get the licenses or were having trouble getting licenses. So they just stayed in the market. They've been open for years. Many of them had gotten listed on Weedmaps. There was a point where I believe the California Cannabis Commission wanted Weedmaps to take down the unlicensed sellers. Weedmaps didn't comply right away. Then the feds sent a subpoena. How did all of that turn out? And knowing what you know now, how would you handle it again in the future?
Yeah, well, so that subpoena has been withdrawn. We actually disclosed that in our last quarter. So the DOJ withdrew that subpoena. Really a great outcome, something that I was excited about. But I think reflective of the fact of where we are as a software company and the fact that we are incredibly leaned into compliance. I think more so than tech companies and almost any other industry. In fact, every business to be on the platform now has to go through what we call our enhanced verification process, where their licensure has to be verified and that sort of thing. But Yeah, I mean, the California thing was a kind of an ancient history thing. California is really an interesting tale and a unique one for how it came to legalize, because, California had under Prop 215 medical cooperatives for, essentially 20 years. And when Prop 64 passed, which was the adult use initiative, everyone widely believed that all the Prop 215 shops would be welcomed into the Prop 64 framework. And in fact, there was this sort of grandfathering that allowed them to continue to operate until 2019 under the Prop 215 framework. Anyway, this is getting a little complicated, but actually, when there was that letter and that back and forth, it was with respect to the Prop 215 operators, and it was still during that grandfathering period where they were allowed to sort of operate under the Prop 215 period. I think the unfortunate thing then and still now is that local control continues to be a problem. California, the Los Angeles County had probably about twice as many Prop 215 operators as the entire state of California currently has under the Prop 64 system. And there's a number of jurisdictions that are going to issue more licenses, but it's been a long and laborious process. I think something that Massachusetts has seen, for instance, if you look at some of the cities that have said they were going to move forward with even hitting the minimum flooring that's required under the state ballot question, the state still hasn't hit the minimum required number of licenses it's supposed to under that framework. But all that being said, in the California case, I think it was, nuanced. It was definitely a learning opportunity, but we'd kind of already publicly made the announcement after working closely with the state regulators that we're going to make this transition to everyone having to go through the enhanced verification process. It was just was frankly complicated, and it was sort of tough as we tried to figure out who had licensure, who didn't, because so many people were strung out in various stages of the licensing process, and so many local jurisdictions were sort of moonwalking towards getting a legalization framework in, that it was a really complicated time. And so while California still needs to get a lot more licenses issued, and it's working towards it, LA may issue another 1,000 licenses in the next quarter or two. I am very happy to have kind of that kind of unsteady transitional period in the window where, I think everyone was trying to figure things out.
Sounds like it only makes you stronger because now you know how to navigate that particular issue. Hopefully it doesn't come up in another state.
Well, with the enhanced verification, it won't, simply because, the businesses have to go through that process to be on the platform. But the other reason it won't is because California is really a unique circumstance, because it had this long tail Prop 215 system, but all those people weren't being automatically grandfathered in. Whereas you look at New York, New Jersey, some of these other places, the existing medical operations are, going to have adult use licenses as well. So it really doesn't become an issue.
Weed Talk and In the Weeds are two productions of Pro Cannabis Media supported by Revolutionary Clinics, one of the top medical cannabis dispensaries in the Massachusetts area, now with 3 locations in Greater Boston, 2 in Cambridge, and 1 on Broadway in Somerville. Rev Clinics has a patient-first mission. They will customize your needs as a medical patient with the proper titration and combination of strains, flavors, and products. Rev Clinics, where the patient comes first.
Difference is building a solution for that individual. Not just a custom, here's a box, here's a video, here's how you make your VMS. We custom design and custom build every situation for exactly what the customer needs. And we keep the costs low. We have multiple tiers, as far as what you're looking at on the cost side of things. If you want a one-time, where you just pay one initial cost, we have that. If you want to maintain your system and have the highest protection and highest capabilities and highest upgrades at all times, we have different plans for you. But we scale it so it's scalable and affordable 100%.
Pro Cannabis Media programming is available live and on demand on our Facebook page at Pro Canna Media, on Instagram at Pro Cannabis Media, on LinkedIn also at Pro Cannabis Media, on YouTube and YouTube Live on Pro Cannabis Media, Twitter at ProCannamedia, and on twitch.tv/ProCannabisMedia. So like, share, and subscribe to all of our content, newsletters, and shows live or on demand.
We are Pro Cannabis Media.